Welcome to All Eyes on Cleveland. My name is Brad Ward. I am your host. Mikey is on the ones and twos behind the virtual glass. Today is September 30th, the year 2021. It is week 4, Vikings week. Stefanski goes home week. Lots of storylines, much to discuss. And back with us again, the one and only Nate Ulrich of the Akron Beacon Journal. How we doing this evening, Nate?
Good. How's it going?
It's going excellent, sir. I appreciate you coming on the show again. Let's dive into some things. Lots to talk about. Stefanski going home. Everybody's covering it. Uh, would be the biggest homecoming, except for Brady's going home. So back to New England. So they kind of fall second in that race. But all right, I've been begging, dying to ask this question to somebody all week. And, you can kind of look at it however what it is. Minnesota, the Browns kind of mirror images of each other a little bit. We know Stefanski spent 14 years there, not 17. When you look at the Minnesota offense and you look at the Browns offense, what do you see any big difference? What are the big differences? Does anything stand out to you that's different about what they do, or are they really that close to what each other, you think?
They're very close. Obviously the history is, Stefanski came up under a bunch of different coaches because he was there for 14 seasons. It's so rare, right, for an NFL coach to stay in that place for so long. And, so he worked for Brad Childress and he worked for Leslie Frazier and Mike Zimmer. And, Childress hired him, obviously, but those other head coaches retained him, worked for a bunch of offensive coordinators. I mean, Norv Turner was there, Pat Shurmur was there, people familiar to the Browns fans. And then Gary Kubiak, and that's why this is so relevant. So in 2019, and I've talked to Kubiak, I've talked to Childress, I've talked to Frazier, about Stefanski, and there's a lot of good information, a lot of good stories that they all have. And the history there, though, is Kubiak told me that Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman asked him if he would come in and, kind of help implement his famous offense and have, Stefanski be the play caller and the coordinator, but to teach him that scheme and to bring it in and make it part of their organization. And Kubiak met with Stefanski, and he said he knew right away that this could work. Because some young coaches, they're not going to like the old Super Bowl winner, standing over the shoulder and watching.
Right, seriously. Yeah.
But Stefanski is a kind of guy who is collaborative by nature, doesn't have a big ego. Everybody has some kind of ego, but Stefanski is a low ego for an NFL coach. And I think overall, from what I've seen, and he and Kubiak worked together. What helped too was, Kevin did not have a history with Gary, but, Kevin is close friends with Gary's son, Clint, who is now the offensive coordinator of the Vikings. But anyway, that helped Kevin learn the system. And then, of course, he brought it to Cleveland. So now Clint's running it there, and it's that Kubiak-Shanahan system. It's predicated on the wide zone blocking, the play action to set up the deep shots, a lot of bootlegs. And that really is why they're so similar, because they come from the same guy, Gary Kubiak. Now, the changeup is, if you're talking about difference, and Mike Zimmer pointed this out recently, and I had heard Wyatt Teller speak extensively about it, because he's so key to the run game, and I think he really likes talking nuts and bolts about running schemes. Bill Callahan provides the change up here between the two teams, and that's because Callahan has such vast experience, one of the greatest offensive line minds in the history of the game. And instead of really just making that wide zone their bread and butter, the Browns bring the gap scheme blocking into their arsenal to change it up and to really, utilize the down blocks of, the athletic guards they have, and Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, of course, J.C. Tretter there at center in the interior too. And so I think that there's more of a mix of the type of blocking schemes that the Browns use because of the Callahan factor. And I would say that's probably the biggest difference there between the two, but they are so similar in so many ways.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That I thought about that, because the Browns are just so multiple, and they'll try they'll use the zone run, and they'll use pulling guards and pulling tackles, and even Treader, and they in the power run game, and they can do it all, right? So they'll switch all that up until they figure out what's working on a given Sunday, obviously, and that's probably not something that Minnesota can do, and probably not a lot of offensive lines can do. Period. Right? I mean, this offensive line, you have to be incredibly skilled at it and have a guy like Callahan to be able to do that. Right? So
Yeah.
it's a huge advantage and a big bonus for the Browns to have that. When you talk about their similarities a little bit more here, how far do you think they have to go as coaches to be different on Sunday? Like, do you think they'll go out of the way to be different and catch them off guard, or are they just going to be like, hey, we're better at this than you are?
That's a great question that I don't quite know the answer to, and I'll be fascinated to take a look at it because it is a great chess match. Because Stefanski's not just familiar with the scheme, but also the personnel. I mean, obviously the Vikings have picked up more, players since he left, but it's just the one season, and well, here we are in the midst of another one, but just a little over one season that he's been gone. So yeah, there's a lot of familiarity. I think Stefanski now, I'm not going to say that he's more fired up for this game or whatever, but I do think that him having this intimate knowledge of Mike Zimmer and what he likes to do defensively could be conducive to a little more creativity. We have seen creativity out of Stefanski,
Yeah.
But Jarvis Landry's not there to throw the passes. But maybe we'll see somebody else. I wouldn't be shocked if an Odell Beckham Jr. throws a pass, or a Kareem Hunt or something like that, because I do think that just the fact that they know each other so well, maybe you want to add some trickery, some wrinkles.
Yeah.
Because the familiarity could create more stalemates than we anticipate. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be a shootout. But the X factor, there's that familiarity we're talking about. Maybe that, lowers the scoring in a way that I'm not really anticipating. Because on the surface, and I keep thinking about it, I think the scoring is going to be pretty high. Now, the over-under isn't necessarily indicating that. So, maybe the odds makers are thinking that there could be some stalemates as a result of familiarity. But yeah, maybe we will see some tricks, and maybe that'll be part of the reason.
Yeah, Stefanski strikes me as a guy that will at least have some stuff in to throw things off, or prepare. He seems to be a guy that takes each week and prepares each week, and knowing the familiarity that he has with this defense, that he would probably have some wrinkles in and maybe some trick plays and things like that to throw them off of the scent a little bit. Let me ask you this, Nate. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland with Nate Ulrich of the Akron Beacon Journal here on Thursday night as we get ready for a big test for the Browns as they face despite being 1-2, a very good Minnesota Vikings team. Could very easily be 3-0. Thoughts on, I've heard a little bit today about it and throughout the week at pressers. What did you think of Baker on Sunday? It was such a good performance by the defense. It was kind of overshadowed. Baker was off target on numerous pass attempts. Do you think his shoulder was bothering him, or is it just one of those days and just kind of forget it and move on?
That's a good question. I don't know if his shoulder was bothering him. I mean, I didn't see him showing obvious signs of discomfort. Now, there were some passes that were off target early, but when I think about 19 of 21 against the Texans, it was the quick passing game, and he was just lighting them up.
Yeah.
The Bears, they definitely went downfield more. So he wasn't taking as many layups in that game. So I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
And there still were some really good throws and some, I think about the sideline balls to DPJ. Now the back shoulder one, it was a phenomenal catch, and he had one to Odell too. Those are some really good throws, I thought. And then, I thought that when they really needed it, I mean, that touchdown drive, I think it was 19 seconds left in the first half. The ball to Hooper was just, perfect and the exact play that they needed there. And so, yeah, I mean, it wasn't like he was wildly inaccurate the whole game that would have made me think that that left shoulder's really affecting him. But, it could have played a factor. And I asked him about it in the buildup to that Week 3 game against the Bears that, he's talking about feet and hips and which way his toes pointing, blah blah blah. So I know it's not his throwing shoulder, but
yeah,
I mean, your whole body plays a part when you're an NFL quarterback in the mechanics. So yeah, it'll be something to keep an eye on. But I tend to think it had more to do with, kind of the attempts they were taking compared with the previous week.
Yeah, it was just he missed one a couple high and wide early, and he missed one wide open to Harrison Bryant coming across the middle early in the first half. No, just ones that notoriously we haven't seen him miss this year. No question, he threw an absolute dime to Hooper on that touchdown. So he still played really well. I just thought those were a little uncharacteristic from what we've seen. This is a big aspect of the game. I think I wanted to ask you about where do you stand with your thoughts on Greedy Williams right now? So he's going to get this start as Greg Newsome is out for week to week, I believe at this point. Yeah. And it's going to be Greedy Williams, and you've got to go up against Thielen and Jefferson, and even now they've incorporated this KJ Osborne, who's come on as a pretty nice little player. Nice fantasy pickup off waiver wire here the last couple of weeks, putting up some decent numbers for them. And Kirk Cousins is playing as good as anybody in the NFL. So. Is that that kind of scares the crap out of me, to be honest, Nate. Does it put Greedy out there at this point, especially with how well Greg was playing?
Yeah, it's a concern. I mean, Greg was playing really well, I thought. And, I think Greedy's a great story. I think he's had a great attitude. They drafted Greg. He could have been, selfish, I guess.
Yeah.
He could have been he could have had an attitude problem about it. He could have said he wanted out. There's so many things that could have happened with Greedy, but he was great about everything. He congratulated Greg, embraced him, welcomed him to the team with open arms, and then competed with him well in training camp. And then he got hurt with the groin injury in that second preseason game against the Giants, and then had no shot in that competition. And I asked Mike Prefer about today because Stefanski had complimented Greedy Monday for his work on the punt return team. And Prefer said, when all that happened and when he got hurt and when he, obviously Newsome had passed him on the depth chart, he came to me and said, "Coach, whatever you need." He knew what his role was going to be, and that was going to be a guy who had to make his most significant contributions on special teams and then continue to get himself ready. And here it is. An opportunity popped up. He knew it would. It's the nature of the business. He's only played 16 defensive snaps, 8 in the opener, 8 this past weekend against the Bears. Newsome leaving with, 11 and change left in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, I mean, I hope Greedy does well because I think that, he's been a great teammate, really a stand-up guy through this whole situation, and a guy who's really worked hard to come back. I mean, nerve damage in a shoulder. I mean, that's a funky injury, and
it is.
I know he wouldn't wish it upon anyone. He missed a whole year because of it, and that's the X factor and the mystery. How is his shoulder going to hold up with a full, game's worth of snaps, hits that are going to come with it? That's what we don't know. Because, yeah, he's been out there, he's been practicing, he's tested it, but to this extent, it hasn't been tested. So we'll see how he holds up. And, yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, Thielen and Jefferson, Cousins is really sharp. The ball comes out very fast.
Yeah.
You mentioned Osborne. He's got a lot of pop as a number 3. So, yeah, it is a huge challenge. And it's definitely a situation where the Browns really need Greedy to hold his own.
Yeah, they
You
do.
can't expect him to be lights out. These guys are going to make their plays. But if he can hold his own, get some breakups, be respectable, not get burned, for a deep one, you want to try to keep the lid on it. Then I think that they can kind of weather this storm. It is nice to have, a guy with starting experience under his belt. I know it was a couple of years ago when he was a rookie, but, you're not inserting Robert Jackson in the starting lineup. You're not elevating a practice squad guy player to play like we had to do last season. You do have you do have some quality depth in the fact that, there are these, unknowns with Greedy coming back, but at least he is a second round pick, is a guy who has, starter experience. So, I think that is better than it has been in the past, gives them a decent shot. And also Troy Hill, you're playing him at nickelback, but he's a versatile guy. And, if you have to, if things are
kick
going
him outside.
Yeah, things are going really south or something like that, then you can do a switch up there with him as well.
Yeah, certainly that crossed my mind. Kind of break glass if in emergency you could throw him outside if you needed to, and even behind him, just to speak to the depth versus last year, where at one point Tavir Thomas, who had never played defensive down, was playing in the nickel, and then now you have AJ Green even behind. Him, who probably I think is at some point going to be a contributor somewhere on an NFL team. So, so let's talk real quickly about Jedrick Wills here before we get you out of here. And then I got one more question here for you, Nate. Jed looks immobile last week. Seemed to have a hard time on the field, off the field, but they seem to kind of be just like, hey, we're going to keep putting him out there. Didn't Hubbard practice this week? Like, wouldn't that be a better option at this point, you think, and let him get that ankle better? Because he got burned a few times, and it hurt him a few times that he couldn't move around it last Sunday.
Yeah, Hubbard did practice Wednesday and Thursday. He was limited. He's got a big wrap on one of his arms,
Okay.
triceps injury. So, I think they obviously like Hubbard, and he's come through for them many times at different positions. Blake Hance has filled in here and there for Wills, as he's dealt with this ankle over and over again and come in and out. And, I haven't seen like a glaring Blake Hance breakdown. You haven't heard his name, which is good. So, I think that they just want Jedrick Wills, as long as this is an ankle sprain that he can play through, to really try his best to play through it, because that's what offensive linemen do. That's the culture of the offensive line room with the Browns going back to, and it's not necessarily fair to Jedrick Wills, but there's the shadow of Joe Thomas, and it just is what it is. And you got Joel Bitonio, who's a great friend of Joe, and J.C. Tretter, who's a great friend of Joe, and they're in there and they're playing hurt. And we know J.C. really, has played hurt with the high ankle sprain a couple seasons ago. He's always got something going on with the knee, and he had knee surgery and missed all of the 2020 training camp, and then was in there. He plays every snap, and he's an amazing, Iron Man type who, he missed a lot of time early in his career with the Packers, but has been an Iron Man for the Browns. And so I just think that, like, they want Jedrick Wills to, as long as the doctors and the athletic trainers say that, he's not going to make this worse. Yeah, it's going to swell. Yeah, it's going to be painful. It's going to be uncomfortable. but they like want him to try to play through it. So that's the vibe I'm getting again this week, and they must think that that's better. I mean, than the alternative. Now, Chris Hubbard, like I said, he's come through for him before. So I think maybe if he was 100% healthy, then they wouldn't necessarily think that this, like, whatever percentage Wills is right now is better than Hubbard. But because he has this big rap and he's coming back from an injury that had him inactive for a couple games, I think that's where it's kind of a more difficult decision. They're trying to kind of manage it the best way they can and hope the Wills can kind of continue to gut it out. And then they've got, Hubbard, Hance fallback options in game if they need them.
Okay. Obviously, it's a situation where they don't feel like he can hurt it a lot worse, or else they wouldn't be putting him out there. At least I would hope not. So, but yeah, we'll see how that goes again on Sunday. And that's interesting. It's incredibly interesting that it's just kind of that's the culture of that offensive line is just to play through injuries, and he's learning it the hard way right now. Some tough days for him. But yeah, he's gotten it out for sure. All right, last thing here, Nate, and we'll get you out of here. Vikings did, another similarity between these teams, besides the scheme and the matchup and the coaching familiarity and similarities, but also in the offseason, very similar that the Vikings go out and attack the defense, and they get some very good defensive players. Patrick Peterson, Brashad Breeland, who was a problem for the Browns for Kansas City last year. He was very good in that divisional game against the Browns wide receivers. Very handsy guy, sticky guy, as they described him during the game. And then Dalvin Tomlinson, as they bring him into the middle of this defense. Both of these defense seem more than adequate, Nate, but it still feels like it's going to be a shootout either way. And it's just like, oh, is that just a matter of, all right, these defenses could both be really good, but their offenses are just further along at this point? It just feels like it's going to be a shootout. Both offenses seem high-powered, and it seems like we're going to see a lot of points. As you mentioned, I was looking at the odds here for a minute ago, and I lost it now, but it's a 2.5-point spread. The over-under is 51. So that's where it's at right now. We're 58.5 some places. So yeah, not super high over/under. It's interesting. Do you think either of these defenses have it in them to step up and stop either of these teams, or are we going to kind of see maybe what I fear? Here's my fear, Nate, is that Joe Woods goes back to the very conservative defense we saw week 1 and week 2 because they're facing a kind of a powerhouse defense again, or offense again.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and here's the thing, like, as well as the Browns played defensively on Sunday, and yeah, they were going against a rookie quarterback and a coaching staff that didn't protect him well and had a bad game plan and all that, but you still have to give credit to the Browns for, like, taking full advantage of that. I mean,
absolutely.
We've sat through a lot of years where the Browns didn't take advantage of everything. They had the talent to do it. They took advantage of it. 9 sacks. We know all that. But this is a different world. I mean, just watching Cousins operate, he's been in the scheme for a little bit now, and he's got complete command. He is a guy who's totally comfortable right now, and the ball comes out, very quick, and it is just a world of difference between him and a rookie who's hanging on to it too long, and Justin Fields. So I think this D-line is stacked, and we saw the type of potential, right, translate on Sunday that we've been thinking that it had. But I just don't know because of this matchup. Like the saying is, right, styles make fights. And I just think that Cousins, with his quick release and the way that he's been playing with these receivers, they can neutralize that pass rush to a large extent. And I think that, the same is true on the other side. I just think that you got two offenses that are going to put up points. And I'm not saying that the Vikings are the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs have lost the past two, but I still think the Chiefs are, one of the best teams in the league. Um, I just think that you're going to see a similar type of game to Week 1, where it's going to be a shootout, and if it isn't, and if these defenses are going to slow these offenses, I think that it's going to be in the form of takeaways more often than not. So, obviously the Browns, like, because this question's been posed to me, can the Browns win in a shootout? In this environment, I think the Browns proved that they can in Week
Yes.
1, even though they lost. So, like, they came out, as we know, they were scorching on offense, a touchdown on each of their first 3 possessions. And then in the second half, you saw the self-inflicted errors. You saw the Nick Chubb fumble. You saw Jamie Gillen drop the snap when he lined up to punt and then got
And then try to
spun.
run with it.
And
Yeah.
he tried to run, 15-yard line, turnover on downs. And then the Baker pick at the end. But I think that despite that, like, if you can clean that up and not shoot yourselves in the foot, like you showed you can win a shootout, because they had it going
Yeah.
in Arrowhead, which is, I know this new stadium for the Vikings is US Bank Stadium. It'll be my first time there because it's new, but it's going to be a great environment. Stefanski says he thinks it's louder than the old place, and
Yeah.
I have no doubt. But Arrowhead is, put it up there, whatever, Seattle, whatever, some of the loudest places in the NFL.
Yeah.
And the Browns, they had him right where they wanted to. We know that. So if that's what I think. Like, I think they can win this game, but the difference is they got to be clean this time. They just weren't clean in the second half against the Chiefs. But they can, and they have the ability to win this style of game.
Yeah. You make a great point with that quick pass game, though. They may be, and if they can't get to Kirk Cousins, they may be forced to play that kind of style of a game where, hey, we're going to make you work it down the field, matriculate the ball down the field, 7, 10 plays, and hope you make a turnover or a mistake or something like that, because we're not going to be able to get to you and sack you. It may turn into something like that, and where it is a shootout. So, like you said, it could be very similar to Week 1. That's interesting. Yeah, you're excellent as always. I appreciate your time tonight, man, and great insight into all of those issues. As this should be a fun one for sure. That's awesome. You're going there. I heard Stefanski talking about how loud it is. It'll be interesting to hear what you think about how loud it is.
I'm eager. I'm fortunate enough to get to go to most of these games, and last year was an exception because the pandemic. I didn't travel. I did go to Pittsburgh just because it's a quick drive and back.
Yeah.
So that was cool, especially because right, one was the first playoff win for the Browns since January 1st, 95. So I was glad to be there and witness that history and cover it in person and all that in a really weird year. But I'm back on the road this year. And the treat for me is these new stadiums. So the Falcons' new stadium is amazing. And that was my first time there in the preseason. Now this one, and then, of course, next week, Week 5, out there in LA for a really, what should be a really highly anticipated matchup with the Chargers. So, yeah, it's really cool to see all the cities, and I'm really grateful to be able to do that. But a little cherry on top is some of these new stadiums. They're a lot of fun. I'll tell you, I was blown away by the one in Atlanta. When the roof opened, it looked like you were in the middle of a scene from Star Wars or something. It was unbelievable the way that thing transformed. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this venue as well because, when you step foot in a new one, it just, it's a whole new experience. It definitely hits you differently.
Absolutely. No question about it. Yeah, that'll be interesting to hear what you think about that. And last thought here, the way this you mentioned, next week, and I don't want to look ahead away from this one because it's so huge. This one's so huge, but the way that this Browns schedule in the first half has kind of lined up now man, the next 6 games are going to really test this team and fight. The Browns are going to find out what they're made of. I mean, these 6 games look brutal right now.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
No breaks. No breaks.
What is
No
it?
breaks.
It's Arizona after the Chargers, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Denver's in there, and
Denver on Thursday night. Yep.
and Pittsburgh, right?
Pittsburgh and Cincinnati.
So, and that's really where it starts, Brad. Like Halloween is the first division game, and like so, all these are important. But yeah, I mean, you got to make hay in the division, and the teams that get to where the Browns want to get, turn it on in November, and beyond. And the Buccaneers, 2020 Buccaneers are the best example of that.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're full circle now, as you mentioned Brady's homecoming earlier. And if anyone knows when to turn it on and how to turn it on, it's him. So these games are huge. But circle Halloween. I mean, and I know the Steelers are off to the start they're off to, but nothing's given in this division.
Yeah. And circle that the quirk in the schedule, of course, the 3 weeks, Baltimore by Baltimore. I mean, I got to think the division is probably decided maybe in those 3 weeks. So
absolutely. Yeah, hey, when I wrote my and everybody analyzed and talked about it, wrote stories, but when I wrote my schedule story, that was it. That was zeroing on that.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's interesting, Nate. I think it actually plays a pretty big advantage to the Browns. If you split those games up, it's 2 separate times in the middle of tough games that you have to get ready for a completely different. It's like playing Navy, right? That you have to get ready for a completely different offense. So you put them together like this. You only have to get ready for them one time. You get to watch tape in between and then adjust and play them again while they have to go to Pittsburgh while you're on a bye. I mean, you really couldn't, as far as Kansas City in those 2 games, putting Kansas City week 1 and those 2 the way they are, if you sprinkle those 3 games into the schedule, think about throughout the middle of the schedule, think about how much more tougher the layout is there than it was week 1 and then block off that 3-week period. It really kind of takes some of the heaviness out of the Browns' schedule, despite how hard it does look the next 6 weeks.
That's good perspective. I agree. And I think basically what you're saying is the Ravens should be pretty angry.
Yes. Yeah. Very. They should. They should. Did them no favors there. So, except for, this Sunday, I think it's Sunday night, the first one. So, they get a little advantage there, night game at home. But, yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be a lot of fun. Every week's going to be tough from here on out, Nate, and I appreciate you taking the time tonight, man. You're fantastic as always. Enjoy your trip. Enjoy it, and I'll be interested to see what you think.
All right. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it.
All right, Nate. Thank you. Nate Ulrich of the Akron Beacon Journal joining us here tonight to talk about what has become an absolutely huge game. I mean, this game, it could not get any bigger now. There's tons, there's the stories associated with this game, but you're really looking at what appears to be, when you look at this Vikings team, let's just bring up their depth chart real quick while we're doing this. I mean, when you look at this Vikings team, they should be probably 3-0. They could be 3-0, but I mean, this is a very good football team. When you go Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, offensive line is suspect, but we're not talking like Chicago Bears suspect. Kirk Cousins has been legitimately as good as anybody in the NFL over like the last 10 games going into last season. I mean, he doesn't turn it over, hasn't turned it over, hasn't fumbled it, which he will do in the past. He will throw, they talk about, it's some wildly accurate and effective short passing game that he just gets the ball out so quick. But you can, the Browns have to be their front four has to be active in getting hands up quick on some of these quick throws because he has given up a lot of batted balls, and that is one thing that you can do and that he is susceptible to is you can get your hand on a ball, you can get a turnover that way, you can get off the field on third down that way. The Browns, if you're not getting to him because he's getting the ball out so quick, that is one way that you can effectively disrupt some of that quick passing game. And I would expect, get a quick push with the Maliks, especially Malik McDowell, get those hands up, that 6'7" frame, get in his vision, and get those hands up. Same thing with Garrett and Clowney. The Browns are loaded with long offensive linemen with long arms and big bodies. Get those up in his face, hands up, quick, knowing that the ball's coming out early, and try to get a turnover that way, tip ball, get off the field on third down, that type of deal. Dalvin Cook, I would expect plays. If not, Alexander Madison was fantastic last week. C.J. Ham is a very good fullback. Danielle Hunter sacked Kyler Murray 3 times, the only player ever to do that. They added Patrick Peterson and Brashad Breeland as their cornerbacks in the offseason. Still have Eric Hendricks and Anthony Barr, staples of this defense from a long time now. And of course, in their safety room, Harrison Smith, who has always been very good, and Xavier Woods from Dallas, who I don't know if he's actually going to play or not. Greg Joseph, very familiar with him at the kicking position. But and along their defensive front, if you take a look as well here, Tyler Conklin is their main tight end right now. They added Christopher Herndon, trying to get him, antiquated with their offense. But Conklin has been very effective for them. But you see here we got Sheldon Richardson, Everson Griffin, along with Dalvin Tomlinson, who came over from the Giants as a huge offseason acquisition for them. This is a very, very good football team. There's no question about it. They are a high-powered offense. They are effective on defense. They've had, last week, in the game against a very good, probably what will end up being a very good Seattle Seahawks team, they were able to shut them down in the second half, which enabled their offense to take over and win that game, which I thought I was kind of surprised that they won. And if you look at the games, they really should be and very likely could be 3-0, and took a very good Arizona Cardinals team right to the wire. Should have beat them, had them in range, and Greg Joseph missed the field goal. So at least should be 2-1 with a win over the Cardinals and a convincing win over the Seahawks at home last week. So not going to be an easy one for the Browns, and the familiarity there just makes this all the more interesting. Nate Ulrich, Akron Beacon Journal, fantastic as always. Let's see what we've got here. Tyler Carmen, subpar O-line, very suspect. Tyler Carmen is a fantastic friend of mine from college, big Vikings fan. Yes, Tyler, they should have beaten Cincinnati week 1. So he has some very intimate knowledge of the Vikings. And they are a very good football team, as I've already just went over. Subpar O-line, very suspect secondary. I like Brashad Breeland, though, Tyler. I don't know. I like Breeland. I've always liked him. I wanted the Browns to kind of get him some depth in the offseason. Struggled off the field on third down. Check down Charlie. Doesn't take enough chances downfield. But Skull. Yeah, very, very valid complaints. Those are the things you would say, is that their downfield game in the offense has not been there, but it really hasn't needed to be. They've been very effective on offense in the short passing game with the checkdowns, with Madison, with the wide receivers, KJ Osborne coming on this week, and they should have beat Cincinnati in week 1. Tyler, love to see you in the chat, brother. Good man. I hope you listened to the interview. It was great with our guy, and good to see you commenting. I miss you, brother. Miss those days. Good old days. Me and Tyler share sure some memories. Spent a few months one night with Tyler in Athens, Ohio, a long time ago. Good buddy of mine. Thanks for watching. This has been another edition of All Eyes on Cleveland. Vikings week. This looks to me like I would have to agree with what, despite what the Browns did last week, this is not anything close to a Bears offense or a Bears offensive line, even though, as Tyler would say, they have a subpar offensive line. It's nothing like what the Bears threw out there. So, and the ball just comes out so quick that it's going to be hard, I think, for the front four to get pressure. I just really hope, and I said this to Nate in the interview, I just don't want to see Joe Woods go so conservative as he did against the Texans and the Chiefs. I understand that you may have to try to make them matriculate the ball down the field and hope you can get a turnover, because turnovers are probably going to decide this game when you're talking about such an even matchup. And I just think that I just think they've got to mix it up. That Joe Woods has got to bring some blitzes, take somebody out of the secondary, whether that be Delpit or JOK or whatever. And once again, as I already talked about a lot, get those big long bodies up in the air, get a tip ball. He is susceptible to those. Comment here in the chat. Tedcast TV, fan of the show. Long time listener, appreciate you commenting, Ted. Was nice hearing Dalvin Cook talk about Stefanski, having him as a coach, and the respect Kevin Stefanski commands is awesome to see. Yeah, I do a show on Monday nights on Nuts and Bolts media, Nuts and Bolts podcast media shows. On the Full Monty show, we do a Monday night countdown, and one of my co-hosts on the show, on the Full Monty show, is A. Marie, who covers the Vikings. So I've heard their breakdown every week from her, and she's outstanding at Part-Time Bro. You can follow her on Twitter. But they just love Stefanski there. Like, every time I bring up Stefanski, it's just like drop the head, like, oh, we miss him so much. So there's no doubt they respect him a ton in Minnesota. But as Stefanski said this week when Trout brought it up about 10, 15 different times by the media, it's a business trip. It's a business trip this week, and it's a big one. This is a big test for the Browns. This one, and then having to go play the Chargers and out there in that new stadium, SoFi. I mean, it's this schedule gets tough real quick. Broncos in there, the Cardinals coming up. They're gonna get tested, and it starts this week. Ted, again, gonna be a test for our squad offensively. Also, developing that rhythm with OBJ is important. Looks better thus far with him. Going to be a huge test for us. Yeah, it does look better so far, 100%. I thought that his first game back, Ted, Cast TV, Ted, I thought 5 receptions, 77, 76 yards, whatever it was last week, didn't look forced. He looked good. First, we find out, this week, first play of the game, popped his shoulder out, had to pop it right back in, still went on and looked very productive, got himself open, got good separation. He, makes that great catch along the sideline. He's always a magician with the twinkle toes, for sure. This is going to be a good one. This is going to be a dogfight. And lots of stories underneath, lots of underlying motivation. And this Browns team, as much as, we talk about Minnesota and Cook and all those guys' respect for Stefanski, this Browns team wants to win this one for Stefanski. He won't speak on it, but they're going to go to war for him on Sunday. So this looks to be really an absolutely huge game and one that the Browns need. It's an absolutely huge test, and this is the kind of game you got to go win if you're going to be legit AFC contenders. And they are up there this week after that that impressive outing, they're up there in the power rankings this week. I've seen them at 3 and 4 in the AFC, so they're up there for sure. Our cornerbacks are probably going to be tested by the, yeah, there's no question. Without Newsome, we talked about this with Nate Ulrich earlier. Without Newsome and their wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Thielen, and of course KJ Osborne, who's looked fantastic so far this year for them as well. Greedy is going to really be tested, and I wouldn't be shocked to see, if Greedy starts to struggle a little, and I hope he doesn't. It's obviously much better than Tavierre Thomas and, the guys that they had to bring in last year. Don't be surprised if they kick Troy Hill outside because he is a proven guy out there as well. So this will be the first time that we really, and it was interesting, if you didn't hear it, go back and listen to what Nate said about Greedy Williams' attitude. Getting beat out by the rookie, he went to, special teams, knew he had to contribute there, has been a great team player about it, knew his opportunity was come, and has been nothing but positive, trying to find a way to contribute on the team. Got his chance last week, as Nate said, Newsome went out with about 11 and some change in the fourth quarter. Greedy came in. But this will be the real test, right? On that nerve damage, on everything. This is the first time he'll be taking real contact, having to come up and tackle, play the run game, do all that stuff. With that damage coming back from that injury, mentally that can be tough. But I think let's hope that he's physically there and ready to do it. But he is not their last line of defense. You can kick Troy Hill out there. You also have AJ Green, so we'll see. It's gonna be a test. It's gonna be a test all around. Defensively, offensively, they're no slouch on defense. They have players over there. But as Nate said, they proved week 1 they can win this type of game in this kind of atmosphere if they play clean. So the difference is they got to play like they did week 1 against Kansas City, but they can't have the turnovers that Jamie Gillum dropped and Nick Chubb fumble. Great points by Nate Ulrich of the Akron Beacon Journal. He was our interview tonight. If you didn't hear it, go back and listen. This has been another edition of All Eyes on Cleveland. I'm hyped. You'll hear if you don't subscribe to the YouTube channel, which you should, and I'll say it now, hit subscribe, hit like, if you want to contribute and, if you like what we do here and you want to contribute and be a member of All Eyes on Cleveland, the link is in the description below. And you can do that. But more importantly, what I was getting to was the show is in podcast form where all podcasts are available, Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. And you can go there and listen to the show if you aren't watching it on YouTube, which of course we encourage you to do, or Facebook or Twitter. One of the problems, though, that I have found out, and if you're watching on Twitter, I don't think your comments are coming through here yet. It's a StreamYard issue. They're working it out, but it will get worked out. So if you have commented and you're watching on Twitter, I can't see it yet. So maybe go to YouTube if you really want to get that point across to me. Ted, again, commenting, Zach McKinley seems quite fired up. He got a sack under his belt. I heard how the players greeted him coming back to the team, clapping as he walked in. We have a team this year. These guys are close. Super Bowl. I agree, man. It's all about that camaraderie. It's all about building together and coming together at the right time. It has to gel. This defense has to gel at the right time. The offense has to be full go at the right time. But they are posed. The difficult thing this year is this 6-game stretch laid out in front of them is rough from here on. You got the Texans, you got the Bears. Okay, now each team you play so far, the way the things look, Chargers, Cardinals, Broncos, 3-0, but I don't think they played anybody yet. We'll see. That's a Thursday night game, and certainly this Minnesota Vikings team. All very, very good football teams that you have to play before you get back into divisional play against a Bengals team that's playing well right now, and a Pittsburgh Steelers team that hopefully we can beat up on this year. but never can take them for granted with that defense either. On Saturday night, look for, I will put out my game day keys to the game, break down the weather, all that good stuff. Did it with Jake Burns last week. We did a little crossover podcast. Probably do that again this week and get that out. So you can listen to that on his feed or mine. All eyes on Cleveland. Mikey on the ones and twos. Huge thanks to Nate Ulrich. Big thanks to TedCast TV, Tyler Carmen for contributing in the chat. Keep coming back. Tell a friend. If you want to contribute, hit the link below or go to the website and hit become a member. At the very least, hit subscribe and like below. My name is Brad Ward. Thanks for watching. Big game on Sunday. Big game. Big game. Got to get it. Troy Hill's ready.
Sir, all eyes on Cleveland. We here. Yeah.
And with that, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Nate Ulrich from the Akron Beacon Journal for lending us his time again. And with that, go Browns. We are out.